Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Today's story is about a CEO who loses his memory and unexpectedly falls for one of his employees. It all starts with a simple business arrangement, a contract marriage meant to protect his company and his assets. But soon, everything takes an unexpected turn. As he tries to rebuild his life, he finds himself entangled in emotions he never saw coming. Meet Ryan Davis, a billionaire CEO who built his empire from the ground up. Despite his success, his life is far from perfect. Known for being ruthless in the boardroom and cold in his personal life, Ryan had no time for anything except work. That was until the accident. A car crash that took everything from him, his memories, his past, and his future. Ryan wakes up in a sterile hospital room with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. The doctors say his amnesia might be permanent. His once flawless memory, gone in an instant. Struggling to cope with this new reality, he's forced to rely on others for everything. And that's where Emma comes in. Emma Clark, his personal assistant. She's been with the company for years, always in the background, quietly handling the chaos of Ryan's world. But now, with him unable to remember anything, she's been asked to step into a much bigger role. Emma was not prepared for this. At first, it seemed simple enough. She'd take care of his daily needs until he regained his memory. But soon, she learns that Ryan's family, his business associates, and even his friends are pressuring him to marry to secure his legacy. A marriage of convenience. It would be the perfect solution for Ryan's company and for his future. The only problem is, Ryan doesn't remember that he's already been married and divorced before. And so, to protect him and the company, Emma reluctantly agrees to step in. She'll be his wife, at least on paper. It's supposed to be a business arrangement. Nothing more, nothing less. But as the days go by, something changes. The lines between what's real and what's fake blur. Ryan may not remember his past, but he begins to see Emma in a new light. He notices the way she cares for him, the small gestures she makes to ensure he's comfortable. He starts to depend on her, more than just a colleague, more than just a wife in name. The emotional walls he spent years building begin to crack. Emma, on the other hand, is confused. At first, she thought this would be easy, just a job, nothing personal. But the longer she spends with Ryan, the more she starts to feel a connection. She sees a side of him that no one else does. The vulnerable side, the side that's afraid of losing everything. She finds herself caring about him in ways she never imagined, but she knows she can't let her feelings get in the way. She reminds herself every day that this is temporary, that it's just for the company, just for his future. But as they spend more time together, something starts to shift. Ryan, in his search for his past, finds something unexpected, a future with Emma. He starts to question if this marriage could be real, if what they're building together is something more than just a contract. And as his memory starts to return, he faces a painful truth. He never truly loved his ex-wife. He never allowed himself to love anyone. But now, with Emma by his side, he wonders if he could change that. Could he fall in love with her? Emma, though, has her own doubts. She knows that Ryan's memory is still fragile and that everything could change once he remembers his past. But despite her fears, she can't ignore the growing feelings she has for him. She finds herself wondering, what if their love is real? What if their contract marriage is the beginning of something more? But in the back of her mind, there's always that nagging question. What if this is just a temporary fix for a man who doesn't even remember what love feels like? As the story unfolds, the lines between business and personal start to blur even more. Ryan's emotions become more real, and Emma must decide whether she's willing to risk her heart for a man who may never fully remember their love. Will Ryan remember his past and see Emma as more than just a business arrangement? Will Emma find the courage to take a leap of faith and open her heart to him? Stay tuned to find out how this unexpected love story unfolds. After their initial meeting, Ryan found himself more intrigued by Emma than he had expected. Every day, he relied on her for more than just his basic needs. She was there for him in ways no one had ever been before. She didn't see him as just a billionaire CEO. She saw him as a person. A man who was vulnerable, unsure of who he was, and struggling to piece his life back together. At first, he had been reluctant to open up, to let anyone in. But something about Emma made it feel easy. He never thought he'd depend on someone so much. But with her, it felt natural. She was his anchor, even if he didn't fully understand why. Ryan's memories remained elusive, but Emma's presence brought a sense of comfort he hadn't realized he needed. Every morning, she would be there, organizing his schedule, taking care of his meetings, and gently reminding him of things he should have known. But it wasn't just about business. It was the little moments, like when she'd stop by his office with coffee in the mornings, or when she'd listen patiently as he struggled to recall details about his past. She was kind, supportive, and there was something about her warmth that made him feel more human. As the weeks passed, Ryan began to notice more about her. She wasn't just efficient and capable. She was compassionate, always looking out for others. He saw it when she helped a colleague with a project, or when she brought in lunch for the staff without being asked. She had a quiet strength that captivated him. And even though he couldn't remember his past relationships, there was something about her that felt familiar. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something more than just gratitude. Emma, for her part, had always kept her emotions in check. She had a job to do, and she was determined to do it well. But the longer she spent with Ryan, the more difficult it became to separate her feelings from her responsibilities. She'd catch herself smiling at him in meetings, her heart skipping a beat when he complimented her on a task she had handled perfectly. And sometimes, when he'd lean in close to ask her a question, she'd feel a flutter of something she knew wasn't part of the contract. She reminded herself every day that this was just a job. It was temporary. She couldn't afford to get involved. She couldn't afford to let herself feel anything. But despite her best efforts, she couldn't shake the connection they were building. The way Ryan listened to her, the way he seemed to trust her more than anyone else, made her heart ache in a way she didn't want to acknowledge. Then one evening, things changed. Ryan had asked her to accompany him to a business gala. It was the first time they would attend an event like this together. Emma had prepared herself for the formalities, the speeches, the small talk, and the inevitable questions about their relationship. But as the night wore on, something unexpected happened. Ryan seemed to open up more than he ever had before. He joked with the other guests, laughed at a few things, and even allowed himself to relax for a few moments. It was during one of those rare moments, as they were standing on the balcony, away from the crowd, that Ryan turned to her. The city lights reflected in his eyes, and for a brief second, she saw something there. A vulnerability she had never seen before. "Emma," he said softly, "do you ever wonder why we're here? Why this whole thing started?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her composure. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when Ryan would question their arrangement. "We're here because you needed someone to help you with your company, and I needed to help." She paused, looking at the stars in the sky. "It's just business. Nothing more." Ryan's expression darkened slightly, but he nodded. "I know, but sometimes it feels like more than that. I don't know if it's because of everything that's happened to me, or if it's because of you, but I feel something. Something I didn't expect." Emma looked at him, her breath catching in her throat. She knew exactly what he meant, but she couldn't let herself feel the same way. "Not yet. Ryan," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "You don't remember everything yet. You don't know who you are. And I can't be the one to make those decisions for you." Ryan took a step closer, his eyes locking with hers. "But I want to know you, Emma. I want to know if we, can be real. Because right now, I feel like I'm falling for you, even though I shouldn't be." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emma felt the weight of them in her chest. She wanted to say something, anything to make this moment feel less complicated, but she knew it couldn't be that simple. She couldn't give in to the feelings she had been pushing away. The night ended quietly, and they both returned to their respective worlds. But for the first time, both of them knew something had shifted. Ryan's memory was still incomplete, but the feelings he was beginning to develop for Emma were undeniable. And Emma, despite her best efforts to keep her emotions at bay, was beginning to wonder if this was no longer just about the contract. Stay tuned to see how this complicated relationship unfolds. Will Ryan's memory come back fully? And will Emma allow herself to fall for the man she's been helping all along? The days following the gala were filled with tension, a quiet unease hanging between Ryan and Emma. Neither of them knew how to navigate the shift that had taken place that night. Ryan's feelings were becoming more complicated, and Emma, despite her best efforts, couldn't ignore her growing attachment to him. She had always been the professional, focused, reliable, and composed. But now, those qualities felt like they were slipping away as her emotions began to take control. Emma threw herself into her work, focusing on the tasks at hand. She couldn't afford to get distracted, not now, not when so much was at stake. Ryan's business was still in jeopardy, and their marriage of convenience was far from over. She reminded herself every day that she couldn't let feelings get in the way of what needed to be done. But every time Ryan looked at her with those earnest eyes, her resolve wavered. Ryan, for his part, was torn. His memories might not have returned, but his heart was starting to remember things he hadn't realized he'd lost. He found himself wanting to spend more time with Emma, not just because of the contract they shared, but because of her. The way she made him feel seen. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't just the CEO of a company. He was a person with real feelings, real connections, and it was all because of Emma. One afternoon, Ryan invited Emma to join him for a business lunch. It was an attempt to move things back to normal, to keep their relationship strictly professional. But as they sat across from each other, something felt different. Ryan watched her closely, as if seeing her for the first time. "Emma," he said quietly, "there's something I need to ask you." Emma looked up, surprised. "What's that?" Ryan hesitated for a moment, his usual confidence faltering. "Do you think this arrangement we have, could become something more? Because lately, I can't help but wonder if it already has." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had feared this moment, and now it was here. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Ryan, we've talked about this. This is just a business deal. Nothing more." She said the words firmly, but inside, she was screaming. She wanted to say something else, wanted to admit what had been growing between them, but she couldn't. "Not yet." Ryan didn't back down. "I know you keep saying that, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels real, Emma. It feels like something more than just a contract." His voice softened. "Maybe I don't remember everything, but I remember how you make me feel." Emma's eyes flickered with emotion, but she quickly looked away. "Ryan, this isn't the time," she whispered, trying to hold on to the professional boundaries she had set for herself. "You're not thinking clearly. You're still recovering. This is just part of the process. It's not real." Ryan stared at her, his eyes searching for some sign of the woman who had been by his side through it all. "Maybe it's not real yet," he said slowly, "but I think it could be. I think we could be more than just business partners. I think you're more than just a contract to me." The weight of his words hung in the air, thick with possibility. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach, the conflict between her heart and her head tearing her apart. She couldn't do this. She couldn't let herself fall for him, not when his memory was still a mess, not when everything was still so uncertain. Ryan saw the hesitation in her eyes, and it cut through him like a knife. He knew he wasn't asking for much, not really. He just wanted her to see him, to understand that what he was feeling was real. But he also knew he couldn't push her. Not yet. She had her own reasons for keeping her distance, and he wasn't sure if he could ever truly understand them. As they finished their lunch in silence, neither of them knew what the next step was. But something had shifted between them, something neither of them could deny. Emma's walls were beginning to crack, and Ryan's feelings were becoming undeniable. But in the back of their minds, there was always that nagging question. What if this wasn't real? What if it was just a temporary connection, born out of necessity rather than true affection? As the day came to a close, Emma found herself thinking more and more about what Ryan had said. Could they be more than just a business arrangement? Could she allow herself to fall for him, despite the risks? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't keep pretending like this wasn't affecting her. Not anymore. Ryan, on the other hand, was left with the same feeling that had plagued him since that night at the gala. He wanted more. More than the empty contract they had signed. More than the professional facade they had put up. He wanted something real, something lasting. And as much as Emma tried to push him away, he couldn't help but believe that they were meant for something more. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Will Emma allow herself to open her heart to Ryan? Or will she continue to keep him at a distance? And will Ryan finally remember the truth about his past? Or will his future be built with Emma by his side? The tension between Ryan and Emma continued to grow in the days that followed their conversation at lunch. Despite their attempts to keep things professional, something had shifted. Ryan could no longer ignore the feelings he had for her, and Emma, despite her best efforts, couldn't pretend that she didn't feel the same way. They both knew something had to change, but neither of them was sure how to move forward. One evening, after another long day at the office, Ryan found himself sitting in his penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. The lights below twinkled like stars, but for the first time, he didn't find comfort in the view. He missed something, someone, and that someone was Emma. He had spent so much of his life focused on his business, on building his empire, that he had forgotten what it felt like to truly connect with someone. But now, with Emma, everything felt different. The warmth she brought to his life, the way she cared for him, it was something he had never experienced before. As he sat there, deep in thought, his phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Emma, simply saying, "We need to talk." His heart skipped a beat. He knew what that meant. They couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. They had to face the truth of what was happening between them. The next day, Emma walked into Ryan's office, her steps slow and deliberate. She had spent the entire night wrestling with her emotions, trying to figure out what she was supposed to do. She couldn't keep pretending that she was just his assistant, just his temporary wife. Not when her feelings for him had grown so deep. But she was scared. Scared of what it meant for her career, and for her heart. Ryan looked up from his desk as she entered, his gaze meeting hers. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The silence was thick with unspoken words. Finally, Ryan broke it. "Emma," he said softly, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I can't keep pretending like I don't feel something for you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, she didn't know what to say. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "this can't happen. We can't." Ryan stood up and walked toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Why not?" he asked, his tone filled with frustration. "Why can't we be more than just a business arrangement? I know I don't remember everything, but what I feel for you is real." Emma shook her head, stepping back. "Because it's not just about us. It's about everything else. Your company, your future. I'm not just some fling. I can't let myself be another part of your business plan." Her words were harsh, but she knew they were true. She had to protect herself. She couldn't let herself fall for someone who might forget about her once his memory returned. Ryan reached out, his hand gently touching her arm. "I know I've been closed off, Emma. I've spent so much of my life building this empire that I forgot what it meant to really live. But you made me feel alive again. I don't want to lose that. And I don't want to lose you." For a moment, Emma stood frozen, torn between the man she was starting to love and the fear of what might happen if she let her guard down. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "you don't remember everything yet. You don't know what you're asking for." Ryan's eyes softened. "Maybe I don't remember everything, but I remember you. I remember how you make me feel. And that's enough. I don't need my past to know that I don't want to let you go." Emma felt her heart ache. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this wasn't just a fleeting moment, but something real. But her fear of the unknown held her back. "What if this isn't enough?" she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "What if we're just pretending?" Ryan stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her cheek. "I don't think we're pretending, Emma. I think we're just beginning. And that's all I need right now. I need you to trust me." Emma closed her eyes, her breath shaky. She had spent so long guarding her heart, but now, in this moment, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, the vulnerability in her voice breaking through her walls. Ryan's fingers brushed her hair back, his touch tender and gentle. "You don't have to know right now, but I promise you, Emma, I'll be here. Whether it's for the business or for us, I'll be here." For the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to believe him. She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing as the weight of her fears began to lift. Maybe they didn't have all the answers. Maybe things were still uncertain. But one thing was clear, she wasn't ready to let go of what they had. Not yet. As they stood there, the distance between them closing, both Ryan and Emma knew they had taken the first step towards something real. And while the future was still unknown, they were ready to face it together. Stay tuned to see how their journey unfolds. Will they finally allow themselves to fall in love, or will their pasts tear them apart? Only time will tell. Days passed, and despite their conversation, Ryan and Emma's relationship continued to feel like walking on a tightrope. The tension between them was no longer just about their professional roles. It was personal, emotional, and deepening with every passing day. Ryan found himself thinking about Emma constantly. She had become more than just a part of his life. She had become his reason for wanting to fight for a future beyond his memory loss and business troubles. Ryan was aware that he had a long way to go before he could fully recover his memories, but there was something undeniably real about what he felt for Emma. And as he started to see the world differently, Emma's presence became more crucial to him than ever before. His feelings for her weren't tied to business or obligation. They were personal, genuine. But with Emma still holding back, unsure of what her heart truly wanted, Ryan knew it would take more than words to prove his commitment. One evening, as the sun set over the city, casting long shadows over the penthouse, Ryan decided it was time to do something bold. It was the only way he could show Emma that he wasn't just some businessman looking to secure his legacy. He was a man, vulnerable and searching for love, for something real. He knew he had to prove to her that their connection was worth the risk. He invited her to dinner at his penthouse, insisting that they meet after work. Emma had agreed, though she was still unsure about the whole thing. She couldn't shake the doubt in her mind. Doubt about their situation, doubt about their feelings. But she didn't want to push him away, not after everything they had been through together. So, she agreed to meet him, even if she wasn't sure what would happen next. As Emma stepped into the penthouse that evening, she was greeted with the sight of candles flickering on the dining table, soft music playing in the background, and a sense of intimacy that was foreign to their usual meetings. Ryan was standing by the window, staring out at the city below. His expression was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made Emma's heart skip a beat. "Emma," Ryan said softly, turning to face her as she entered. "I wanted to do something special. Something that shows you how much you mean to me." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Ryan, you don't have to," she started, but Ryan cut her off. "I do," he said, stepping closer to her. "I've spent so much of my life focused on what I could build, what I could achieve, but none of that matters if I don't have someone to share it with. And I've realized that someone is you. I know we're not perfect. I know things are complicated, but I want to try, Emma. I want to try to make this work, to build something real with you." Emma stood frozen, her heart racing in her chest. She had heard these words from him before, but this time, they felt different. They felt more sincere, more real. She wanted to believe him, but the fear still lingered. The fear that they were rushing into something too soon, that they were still too uncertain about their futures. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice shaking, "I don't know if I'm ready. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everything we've been through, everything we're still going through. I'm afraid." Ryan reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I'm afraid too, Emma, but I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to face whatever comes next with you by my side. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance. Just a chance to see where this could go." The intensity of his gaze made Emma's heart flutter. She had been fighting this connection for so long, but in this moment, she couldn't deny it any longer. She didn't know where this would lead, but she knew she couldn't walk away from it. Not now. Not when she had already let him into her heart. Without saying another word, Ryan leaned down and kissed her gently, a kiss that was soft and tender, yet full of the emotions they had both been holding back. The kiss lasted only a few moments, but it felt like a promise, one that neither of them could ignore. As they pulled away, Emma looked up at Ryan, her eyes filled with uncertainty, but also something deeper, hope. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Let's see where this goes." Ryan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered back. "I promise I won't let you down." And in that moment, Emma knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. The future was still unknown, but the bond they had formed was undeniable. As the night unfolded around them, they both knew they had taken the first real step towards something more. Stay tuned to see how their story continues. Will Ryan's memory return completely? And will Emma finally allow herself to believe in the love they're building together? Days passed, and the connection between Ryan and Emma deepened. They had taken a leap of faith together, and while things weren't perfect, there was a sense of peace between them that hadn't existed before. Ryan felt more alive than he had in months. He was no longer just a man with no past, drifting through his days with little purpose. With Emma by his side, he was starting to believe that maybe his future could be better than he ever imagined. But even as Ryan's feelings for Emma grew stronger, there were still doubts that lingered in the back of both of their minds. For Emma, the fear of getting too close to someone who might not remember her in the future haunted her. She had lived most of her life keeping a safe distance from people, never allowing herself to be vulnerable. And now, with Ryan, everything felt too raw, too real. Ryan, on the other hand, was struggling with his own fear, the fear that once he regained all of his memories, everything he had started to build with Emma might fall apart. What if he didn't remember her the way she remembered him? What if this connection they had was just a temporary side effect of his amnesia, nothing more than a brief chapter in his life? He was terrified of losing her. He had already lost so much, and the thought of losing Emma was a pain he couldn't bear. One evening, as they sat together in Ryan's penthouse, the conversation took a turn. Ryan had been unusually quiet all evening, and Emma couldn't ignore the change in his demeanor. She had learned over the weeks that when Ryan was quiet, it usually meant he was grappling with something heavy. "Ryan, what's going on?" Emma asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. "You've been distant lately. You're not yourself." Ryan hesitated for a moment before looking up at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "I don't know how to say this, but I'm afraid." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen Ryan like this before. He had always been so composed, so in control. But now, there was vulnerability in his eyes that took her by surprise. "Afraid of what?" she asked gently, her hand reaching out to take his. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm afraid that when my memory comes back completely, it won't include you. I'm afraid that everything we've built, everything we've shared, will just disappear. I don't want to lose you, Emma. I don't want this to be a dream that fades away once I remember who I was." Emma looked at him, her heart aching. She had been pushing those same thoughts away, pretending that everything would work itself out, but hearing Ryan say them out loud made her realize just how real their fears were. She had always been afraid of getting too close to anyone, and now, she couldn't ignore the possibility that their connection might not survive the return of his memories. "Ryan," Emma said softly, her voice trembling, "I don't know what's going to happen when your memory comes back, but I can't keep living in fear of what might not happen. I can't keep holding back from you because I'm afraid you'll forget me. I can't live that way anymore." Ryan looked at her, his expression filled with both relief and sadness. He wanted to hold her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but the truth was, he didn't know if it would be. All he knew was that he didn't want to lose her, not now, not when he had finally started to understand what love truly was. Emma squeezed his hand, trying to steady her own emotions. "Ryan, no matter what happens, no matter what your memory holds, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Ryan's heart swelled with gratitude, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could finally breathe. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to face it. Not with Emma by his side. As they sat together in the quiet of the penthouse, both of them lost in their own thoughts, it was clear that they had reached a turning point. They were no longer running from their feelings, no longer hiding behind their fears. They had finally admitted to each other the depth of their emotions. And now, they were ready to face whatever came next, together. Stay tuned to see how their journey continues. Will Ryan regain all of his memories, and will their love survive the test of time? Or will the fears they have about the future come to fruition? Only time will tell. Weeks went by, and the weight of their unspoken fears still hung over Ryan and Emma. Their connection had deepened, but the question of Ryan's memory, of what would happen when it returned, still lingered in the background. They were walking a fine line between love and uncertainty, and it seemed like neither of them could fully escape the haunting thought that their relationship might be temporary. Ryan had his moments of clarity, but they were fleeting, and the more he learned about his past, the more he began to fear that Emma might be a chapter that was destined to end. Emma, on the other hand, found herself caught between wanting to believe in what they had and the overwhelming fear that it might all disappear the moment Ryan remembered everything. It was one afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city, that Ryan finally made a decision. He couldn't keep waiting for the perfect moment. He couldn't keep living in the shadow of his past, afraid of what might come. If he wanted a future with Emma, he had to stop hiding from the truth, and that meant confronting the very thing he had been avoiding, his memories. Ryan called Emma to his office, asking her to meet him there. As she entered, she found him sitting at his desk, a serious expression on his face. He looked up at her as she stepped into the room, his eyes filled with determination. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Emma's heart raced. She had been bracing for this moment, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she was ready. "What is it, Ryan?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though she could feel the nerves building inside her. Ryan took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something difficult. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us, about my past, about what happens when I get my memories back, and I've realized something important." He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. "I can't keep living in fear. I can't keep putting off facing my past just because I'm afraid it will tear us apart. I'm ready to remember, Emma. I'm ready to face whatever comes with it." Emma stood frozen, her mind racing. She had known that Ryan was struggling with the idea of his past, but hearing him say that he was ready to face it felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders. At the same time, a knot formed in her stomach. What would this mean for them? Would Ryan still want her when he remembered everything? Or would the person he used to be push her away? "Ryan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "are you sure you're ready for this? What if everything changes when you remember?" Ryan stood up and walked over to her, his expression softening. "I don't know what will change, Emma, but I do know that I don't want to let you go. I've spent so much time worrying about my past, but the truth is, I don't want to lose what we have. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I'm ready to face whatever comes, because I want a future with you. I want this to be real." Emma's heart ached, torn between fear and hope. She had been so afraid of losing him, of letting herself fall for someone who might not remember her. But Ryan was right. How could they move forward if they kept hiding from the truth? She had to trust him. She had to trust that their connection was real, no matter what memories came flooding back. "Okay," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Let's face it together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Ryan smiled, his heart lifting with relief. For the first time in a long while, he felt certain about something. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that with Emma by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment, both of them realized that they had reached a turning point. They were no longer hiding from the truth, no longer afraid of what might happen when the past came back. They were ready to move forward, together, no matter what. Stay tuned to see how their story continues. Will Ryan's memory return fully, and will their love survive the test of time? Or will the shadows of the past tear them apart? Only time will tell. The days that followed were filled with a quiet anticipation, both Ryan and Emma bracing themselves for the moment when Ryan's memory would finally return. They had faced their fears, spoken their truths, and now, they had to trust that what they were building together was real. Ryan had made peace with the fact that his memories might come rushing back all at once, and he knew that when they did, everything could change. But with Emma by his side, he was determined to face whatever came next. Emma, too, had made the decision to stop living in fear. She was ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that they were stronger together. One evening, Ryan and Emma sat on the couch in the penthouse, the soft glow of the fireplace casting a warm light across the room. They were talking, as they often did these days, about everything and nothing. The conversation was easy, comfortable, a far cry from the tension that had once defined their relationship. But there was a shift in the air, something unspoken hanging between them. Ryan had been quiet for a while, his mind clearly elsewhere. "What's on your mind?" Emma asked, noticing his distant look. She could tell that something was bothering him, something he hadn't yet said. Ryan turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about my past, about who I was before the accident, and I think I'm ready. Ready to face it all. Everything that I've been avoiding." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She knew this moment was coming, the moment when Ryan would have to confront the truth of his past. She had been there for him through the uncertainty, through the fear, and now it was time for him to finally reclaim what he had lost. She was proud of him, but she couldn't shake the nerves that crept into her chest. What if, when he remembered everything, it was too much? What if he remembered something that made him pull away from her? Are you sure you're ready for this? Emma asked softly, her voice tinged with concern. Ryan nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet resolve. I am. I don't want to keep running from it. And I don't want to keep running from you. I've come this far, and I can't go back now. I need to know who I am, who I was. And no matter what I remember, I need you to know that I'm not going to walk away from what we have. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She knew he was being honest, but the fear that had been holding her back for so long still lingered. I'm scared, Ryan, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What if everything changes when you remember? Ryan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I can't promise that it won't be difficult. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. But I can promise that I want to build a future with you. I don't know what's going to happen when my memory comes back, but I know I want you in that future. Emma took a deep breath, her chest tight with emotion. She looked into Ryan's eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the vulnerability that mirrored her own. Okay, she whispered. Let's face it together. Ryan leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a soft, lingering kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through, of all the uncertainty and fear that had brought them here. But it was also a kiss that promised something more, a future, one they would build together, no matter what. The next day, Ryan made the call. He had arranged for an appointment with his neurologist, the doctor who had been helping him with his memory recovery. It was time to face the past and see what memories would return. As Ryan and Emma sat in the waiting room, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Emma sat beside him, her hand in his, offering him silent support. She had always been there for him, and now, she was with him as he took this next step. When the doctor finally called him in, Ryan stood up, taking a deep breath. Emma gave his hand one last reassuring squeeze before he walked into the examination room. The doctor greeted him with a warm smile and motioned for him to sit down. Ryan, we've made great progress in your recovery, the doctor said, his voice calm and reassuring. Today, we'll see how much your memory has come back, and we'll go from there. Ryan nodded, trying to steady his nerves. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew it was time to face the truth. Stay tuned to see what happens next. Will Ryan's memories return? And if they do, will they change everything? And how will Emma cope with the aftermath of those memories? The following days were filled with anticipation, uncertainty, and a mix of emotions. Ryan had gone through the memory recovery process, and while some pieces of his past had started to resurface, there were still gaps, still fragments of memories that didn't quite fit. But there was one thing Ryan knew for certain now. His life, his future, and his heart were bound to Emma. The man he was before the accident might have been different, but the man he was becoming was deeply connected to the woman sitting beside him. After the appointment with the neurologist, Ryan and Emma had talked for hours. The doctor had told Ryan that his memories would return gradually, and it was possible that some memories might never fully come back. But what struck Ryan the most was how much he didn't need to rely on his past to know what he wanted now. What he wanted was Emma. I remember some things, Ryan had said that evening, his voice tinged with frustration. But the most important thing is that I remember how I feel about you, Emma. I don't need to remember every detail of my past to know that you're what I want, what I need. You're the one I want to build my future with. Emma had held his hand tightly, her heart racing as she heard the sincerity in his words. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid that when his memory returned, the man he had been before the accident would change everything. But now, she realized, he wasn't just the man he used to be. He was the man he was becoming, and he wanted to become that man with her. Ryan, Emma whispered, her voice full of emotion. I'm not sure what comes next for us, but I know I can't do this without you. Ryan smiled, a warm and genuine smile that made Emma's heart flutter. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. I feel the same way. I know things are still uncertain, but we've already built something real. And that's enough for me. Weeks passed, and Ryan's recovery continued. His memories returned slowly, and some parts of his past came flooding back to him. He remembered his childhood, his family, and pieces of his career. But the memories that mattered the most, his feelings for Emma, remained clear and unshakable. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Ryan's penthouse, watching the sunset, Ryan turned to Emma with a serious look in his eyes. Emma, he began, his voice steady. There's something I need to ask you. Emma looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it, Ryan?" she asked, knowing this was the moment that would change everything. Ryan took a deep breath, his hands shaking slightly as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small box, and with a soft smile, opened it to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. "Emma Clark," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Will you marry me? Will you be with me, not just for the rest of my life, but for all the days that I remember, and all the days that I will never forget?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at Ryan, her heart bursting with love and joy. She had feared this moment for so long, unsure of what would happen when Ryan's memories returned, but now, with the ring in front of her, she knew. This wasn't just a fleeting connection. This was real. This was forever. "Yes," Emma whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Ryan's face lit up with relief and joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. They kissed, and in that kiss, Emma knew that they had overcome every obstacle in their way. Their love had survived uncertainty, fear, and doubt. It had weathered the storm of amnesia and the fragility of memory, and now, it was stronger than ever. As they stood together, their future ahead of them, Emma and Ryan knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. No matter what happened in the future, they had found something rare and beautiful. They had found love, and that was all they needed. Stay tuned for more. Will their love continue to grow, and how will they face the challenges ahead? Only time will tell, but one thing was certain. Together, they were unstoppable.